and Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Richard Sprague.
I gotta give you your dream shot. I'm gonna send you up against the best. You two characters are going to Top Gun.
Chilanga's going to take from the left-hand side.
Oh,
yeah! And a header! Morgan gets right! Flashing header near post! Bullet-like into the top of the net! Side to Ola Aina well forward, and he's found Elanga. Elanga gets away from Lamptey, right-hand side. Woods header! Yes!
Don't worry, I'll take care of this.
You never close your eyes anymore when I kiss your lips.
There's no tenderness like before in your fingertips.
You're trying hard not to show it, baby. But baby, believe me, I know it. You lost, I love you, bleeding. Oh, I love you, bleeding. You lost, I love you, bleeding. Now it's you lost, I love.
There we go.
Oh my goodness gracious! That it's hard to want to rank all of these, but I think that one just absolutely obliterated. I mean, the rest of them have been phenomenal, but that was like the editing, the poetics of that, man, was just incredible. Well done.
Regulars will know the intros have been started out a bit clunky, and it can be a little bit clunky with the sound clips. But I found my mixer today. I was like, okay, this is what I've been after. I can go over the top, and it's so much better when you've got Colin Frey with music behind. You know, I'm going to spend far too long playing around with that. I can guarantee it. Right, okay, on we go. To support World Down Syndrome Day, we are really excited to bring you a very special edition of our The One With series. All of you will, of course, remember the fabulous episode we did recently with Helen and Joseph from Warriors United, and how much Nottingham Forest has been doing to enrich the lives of those young people and ensure that they are celebrated and never overlooked. And our guest today is someone who has first-hand experience of the club and players being so warm and so welcoming. Cast your mind back to the days of Chris Cohen as Forest captain and that famous game when he carried out the little mascot in his arms. That little boy with Down syndrome was, of course, Tyler Cove, and he captured the hearts of all Forest fans with his wonderful smile and joyous face, and it was another example underlining Forest's commitment to all corners of its fan base. So, joining us today, we are thrilled to welcome Tyler's dad to chat about Tyler and Forest and a whole range of other things and the impact that we all can have on the Down syndrome community. Sit back and enjoy the One with Andrew Cove.
Sometimes you feel mighty, but sometimes you feel like him. Sometimes you see people wear a big smile and wonder how to adopt it. But sometimes you recognize your blessings and manage to spot them. Being different is what makes you a special individual, so don't ever drop it. Listen up, people consider crazy something that is way out of the league. So they speak about it like it's foolish to even think you could achieve something you dream, something you see, but something that no one ever would see. A real deal, but you know and feel that that's a reality. Learn to be different. You're not alone. Don't be afraid to be different. Let your colors show. You should be proud that you're not the same. The world will be done.
Andrew, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to Talking Reds. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. Delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation to come on. I think this is it's a fantastic podcast that you guys do. So delighted to be able to share both mine and Tyler's story and talk about a whole raft of topics, hopefully, because as you can imagine, my life is very busy. I try to pile on top of that as much as I can and make it as busy as is absolutely humanly possible. So yeah, we've hopefully got a lot of good topics to cover. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, I wanted to just quickly throw up a slide. One tweet that you talked about has gone completely, it's blown up a little bit on the one on the left here, which is Andrew tweeting out about, World Down Syndrome Day, which was yesterday. So how special has it been for you to be a part of that and to be able to promote that and help others be able to have the opportunity to get exposed to the amazing kid that you have? And I know you've got other kids too, amazing kids as well, but just being a part of that community and being able to champion that.
I think it's great, and I think you see this with lots of other different aspects as well. That just having a day to celebrate, that uniqueness, that individuality that all these children and these human beings have. For me, obviously being very close to a particular condition with Tyler having Down syndrome, I think it's nice that we can recognize that and that we can just spend a day being proud and being boastful and being celebratory about how impactful those children are in our lives. And we'll come into it in more detail, I'm sure, over the course of the podcast. But how much on an individual level that can impact you and make you grow and develop and you find strengths that you didn't know you have. So being able to then promote that on a day, and let's be fair, we promote and we celebrate it every day, but just having a day to really tunnel in and focus on it, I think that it's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love we have another picture for those who can't see it and are listening maybe to the podcast. We have another picture that's from the Nottingham Forest account that shows a picture of Nuno doing the sign language. And it was that Maddie, which gentleman? Yeah,
yes,
Maddie. Yeah,
that's Helen's son.
yeah,
very well.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
Incredible young man.
Absolutely. Yeah, such an awesome moment. And I know we all kind of just loved every second of the interaction that they had. Joseph, who we had on as well in a previous episode, and him and Helen, and they're just incredibly special people. But from how did this sort of relationship with the club start for you and your family? Because I know it's been very important for you guys. And as Greg touched on with Tyler coming out with Chris Cohen. And so how did that start and develop? And how much has that meant to you guys as a family as a whole to have that kind of connection? Because obviously Forest is very special to you personally.
It is. And it's been a very, very long journey. And I always reflect back on how, as a percentage of my life, how much time Forest have occupied as being like this central component of something that's incredibly important to me. My first game, and it was my dad that took me to my first game, and you'll see this kind of this connection to my relationship with the club and how I want to bring Tyler into that relationship, that it was my dad that took me to my first game. I'm sure that story's echoed against a lot of other people's experiences. So back it would have been in 1988, and it was the winter of 88, and my dad took me to a home game against Coventry City. It was in November. Even though it was that long ago, and I'm not going to go into exactly how old I am, but trust me, it's a few decades ago. There's still little bits from that game and that day that I remember. I know roughly where we sat in the then executive stand, now the Brian Clough stand. I remember like walking to the stand, and there used to be this old off license that you used to walk past. And I remember going in there just to pick up like a drink of pop or something. I forget what it was, but even then, I still remember the little pieces of it. And the game itself was a huge letdown. It was 0-0. It was cold. It was wet. It rained. But as I'm sure echoes a lot of other people's experiences, there was just something about it, and you get hooked, and then you want to go back. And then early the following year, we got a half-season ticket in the lower executive stand at that point, and we just kept going and going. So I caught the tail end of the Brian Clough era, right through the Premier League era with Clark and Atkinson and Pearce and all those ups and downs that we had. Then I wouldn't say I drifted away, but I had my own life journey to take. So I went to university. I was in Sheffield. I still saw the occasional away match. I was actually living for 4 of those 5 years. I was less than a block or 2 away from Bramall Lane. My first professional job was working as a crowd safety steward at Sheffield United. The only games I didn't work were when Forest were in town, because I'd go and I'd get an away ticket and I'd sit in the away end, watching the game. After that, I went traveling. I spent a lot of time traveling and kind of exploring the world. So when you're traveling and you're, on the opposite side of the world in New Zealand or Australia, 2 of the places, I lived and traveled, you can't exactly fly back to a game every now and then. So I still followed. And I remember when I was in Australia, I had my dad send me that season's jersey so I could wear it. He sent me that as a birthday present. So my journey with Forest spans back for years and years and years. And it becomes kind of part of who you are. So fast forward then to 2014, first child's on the way. There were complications, which I won't go into, but something kind of wasn't sitting right. We didn't have any prenatal diagnosis. So the first we learned of Tyler's condition was 48 hours after birth. We were taken into the side room. We were told postnatally that Tyler, they suspected he had Down syndrome, and they would confirm 24 hours later after doing all the genetic tests and whatever. They did then confirm that, a day later. And I recall very vividly, one of the nurses said to me, your one objective now is make sure Tyler has the best life he can. Now, I don't know if how the intent was meant to be in a negative or a positive way, but I'm a glass half full guy. I took it in a positive way. And I was like, well, this is my first child. It may be my only child at that point. I don't know. But I'm going to make damn sure that he has the best life possible. And part of that life is, I'm a huge sports fan. I'm a huge Nottingham Forest fan. They're my team of all the sports that I follow. I want to introduce him to football and have him share those experiences that I share. So as Tyler got older, and not that much older because it was quite early on in the journey when the whole the mascot thing happened, we'd started tweeting out, and every now and then, so World Down Syndrome Day for his first birthday, or just after his first birthday, I put some tweets out, and I tagged some players from the club. I tagged Henry Lansbury. I tagged Chris Burke, and we'll come back to Chris Burke later because I know that is quite a deep cut. And players were very kind, and some of them retweeted, and we got a little bit of action and reactions, and it was nice. The Tyler mascot thing almost, I wouldn't say it kind of happened by accident, but again, it was another one of those scenarios where I bought Tyler the yellow jersey on his second birthday. I took this incredible photo of it, that lightning in a bottle, one of those moments that I will probably never experience again, getting a photo that good and just that moment in time to capture it. And I put it on Twitter, and Henry Lansbury saw it. He followed me on Twitter. He sent me a message. The rest of the story I've told so many times, but he sent Tyler a signed jersey. I sat on the story for a little while, and then eventually at the beginning of the following season, I posted on Facebook. That story connected with a lot of people to the tune that the local newspaper reached out. So the Nottingham Post called me the day after it kind of blew up on Facebook. I did an interview. Story went online. I connected again with Henry Lansbury, and he asked for an update on Tyler, who just started to learn to walk at that point. Things happened, and Henry invited Tyler to come along and be a mascot. He said he had to lead the team out, and I was like, yeah, sure, okay, we'll see that when it happens. And he followed through, and he made it happen. So that led to the mascot experience. That wasn't the end of it. It keeps going. And after that, we connected. So we were living in Coventry for a period of time. Jamie Patterson, the former Forest player, is from Coventry. He was playing for Bristol City at the time. He called us out on Twitter, and he said, I'll have to come around and have a cup of tea with you one day, and we can talk about Tyler. I was like, will you, mate? Okay, well, yeah, we'll make it happen. That's fine. So he came round. I remember again vividly, I had this knock on the door. We'd arranged it. It wasn't like he surprised us. This knock on the door, I opened the door, and Jamie Patterson stood in our doorway. So he comes in, and we spend some time talking. At the end of that conversation, he says, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. And I'm, again, cheeky as I am, I said, well, I want to keep getting Tyler to games. I want to try and introduce this as a normality, that he can experience these games and he feels comfortable and he can share this incredible thing that I enjoy doing. If you could help us get him to a game, that would be incredible. Jamie's very kind. He says, well, reach out to me when the fixtures are released for the next season and we'll see what we can do. Long story short, reached out, he connected, and we managed to get Tyler to an away game at Bristol City. There's been so many other beats past that. I won't go through them all because we'd literally be here for days and days and days talking about every single beat that happened. But long story short, like every time we've kind of wanted to engage with the club or tried to do something, we've been very fortunate that we've had people be very kind and very generous and reach out. We've had Nick Randall help us out just before we moved to the States. He was helpful getting us a hospitality box so that Tyler could see a game before we went. Now we're out here. There's been occasions since then again where we went back for a vacation. First time we'd actually flown back was in the spring of last year. And again, the club were very generous. They helped us get access to a special needs, accessibility driven hospitality box so that Tyler could again watch a game and experience that and see how he'd enjoyed it and see where he's at in his development in terms of enjoying sports and football specifically. So my journey, especially with Tyler, because I feel like it's kind of split into two parts. I've got my journey as a fan with my dad, and now I've got the journey with Tyler as his dad. The journey with Tyler is obviously very different, especially with us being now 4,000 miles away in a different continent. But I still want to keep that going. So, I get in the jerseys. He wears the jerseys. He was literally wearing a jersey 2 days ago to school. So I want to keep that in the family and keep it as part of who he and we as a family are. It's just different now. So, yeah, my journey with Forest, I am forever thankful and grateful of what they do. I said recently on a different podcast that I owe the club so much for everything that the community, the fans, the club, the people that work there, the players historically have done for me as a fan, for us as a family, for Tyler as an individual. I owe them so much. Like, the club owes me absolutely nothing. Like, I'm forever in their debt for everything that they've done for me over the past 30 something years.
So the club we love, and to hear heartwarming good things about what they can do for families and for communities, the Warriors and individual families is amazing. And you talk about your own background as a Forest fan and how you, by the sounds of things, inherited the love of Forest from your own dad, like I did, and Richard, his grandfather. And we that for us, it's a big thing on Talking Reds, the kind of passing the baton down. And you know, it's so important to you when it comes to Tyler. And you mentioned you have how many other children is it you've got, Andrew?
I have 4 children in total. So Tyler is the oldest at 11. Then I have Cecily, Poppy, and Oakley.
So I'm not sure you haven't mentioned yet, but maybe the Forest baton will be passed to them as well, or an attempt will be made as well. And that's really what we can ask for, isn't it? Just to keep that going. But when it comes to you getting that access and the mascot experience, and you talked about Jamie Patterson and all these kind of wonderful things that have happened, what's been the impact on Tyler? How much has he kind of been able to understand how big it is, I suppose? And what kind of impacts that had on him?
Yeah, it's a really good question and a really good point, because honestly, with Tyler's mental development and the condition that he has, I'm not sure he understands the weight of how big a gesture these things are to him. But at the same time, if he didn't do those things, he never will. So for me, I'm one of these people. I'll persist. I'll keep trying and trying and trying as long as I can. The fact that I keep getting, these god level experiences for Tyler it's incredible, and I'm forever thankful for them. In some ways, it's not incidental to him and his experiences. It absolutely helps. I hope he understands what's going on. I remember I watched back, so I got some of the video footage from when we were back in the spring, and there are little pockets of time where you can kind of see that it's not necessarily that he's enjoying the fact that it's at a football match or the fact that he's at Nottingham Forest, but he is absolutely enjoying the experience. I think there's a weight and a power to that as well. When he is old enough, and his development's going along and he's doing really well, and he's getting there, and his cognitive abilities improve by the day and by the week. His vocabulary and his communication is also improving. There will come a point in his life where I can have a conversation with him and I can reflect back on the experiences that he had, and it may be that you can't put context and weight to them now, but at some point when we are both older, I can show him the picture of Chris Cohen holding him as a little boy. I can show him Jamie Patterson holding his hand, walking him out of the tunnel at the Bristol City game. I can show him the video of him pitch side with me holding him as we sing Mull of Kintyre before the Crystal Palace game last season. And then they'll mean something, and he can put context to it then. So while I don't know if he understands exactly what's going on or he understands the game of football, I can see a development. I can see a progression. There are times, so I watch the games every week. It's like my ritual, it's my pilgrimage. It's the one thing I wanted to make sure I kept with me when I moved to the States, was I wanted to make sure that I kept following Forest, and I do that through watching it on the TV every week. There are times when Tyler will come in and he'll sit down and he'll watch the game with me a little bit, or we'll celebrate. He'll hear me screaming blue murder or screaming my head off because we've just scored, and he'll come in and he'll have a look. He'll look on the TV, and if he sees me jumping around like an idiot, he'll join in and he'll jump around like an idiot as well. So he's getting there. Like I said, I don't know to what extent he understands because he can't tell me that, but I think and I believe that he's understanding more and more as time goes on. So like I said, there'll come a point when we can reflect. For now, I just want to keep building those experiences for him for that moment when that does happen.
Yeah, one thing too, that's amazing. One thing I think was so incredible to talk with Helen and the Warriors United group was the fact that you realize with even more sort of in a more tangible way how essential these kinds of support groups within the community are. So have you guys been able to do anything like that over here in the States? Are there things like that in America that you've been able to connect with that maybe aren't always sports related, but maybe they are? Has that been available, or is that something
yes,
that,
no. One of the big challenges with moving overseas for me was you kind of abandon that support network that you have. So back in England, we had family, we had friends, we had close friends, and we were in a community of families who had children with Down syndrome. When we were in Coventry, it was a group called Archie Smile. So they knew the same, to an extent, their stories were their own unique stories and their own path was different, but they understand there was this collective understanding of what you were going through as a family, the challenges that you faced. Over here, we still have friends and family, not family, sorry, we still have friends that we've made but that network is so much smaller than we had back in England. So it is challenging. It is more difficult. In the Wisconsin area that I live in, so we're about 30 minutes south of Milwaukee. There's a program called Coos for Kids. Every year they do what they call it, like, I think it's Challenger Baseball. And I'm a huge baseball fan, so this kind of leans into another component of something that I want to introduce Tyler to. And every August, 4 weeks in August, they invite children with additional needs along to a little league ballpark, to a diamond, and they just spend weeks doing drills. So they'll have like one group catching, they'll have one group hitting, and they just do that, and they make it fun, and they just make it inclusive. So there are volunteers for every child there. So they'll have partnered up with someone with Tyler, and there'll be someone throwing the balls, and he'll have a bat, and he'll swing the bat, and then he'll run the bases, and he'll have fun. So it's not the same in the sense that there's not as much football over here. I've noticed that. Like, we did try in the first year or two after we moved out here to introduce Tyler to the local soccer, league in Kenosha, which is where I live, and it didn't particularly go well. There are ways that the US develop children in that sport that I'm not particularly happy with. I think they introduce skills at a far too young age, and it just doesn't seem like it's driven in the right way. And Tyler was not interested. Tyler is very happy to run in a specific direction and keep on running. So in an open field where there are lots of pitches and lots of kids, being able to control him and keep him contained and safe more than anything else was difficult. So we stopped doing that after a couple of years, and we kind of tried to find other things to do that would engage him, and unfortunately football wasn't that. But no, we have some very close friends. We have, a small but trusting community that we connect with, but it's not the same. Like I say, it is more challenging being this far away from home and friends and family that
Before we came on, we were just chatting about terminology and how it's really important to get that right when it comes to talking about children or individuals with Down syndrome. And you wanted to highlight and point out that just because a child or a person has Down syndrome or any other anything else, it doesn't define them as a person. And I think that I wanted to mention that because it's really important, because I also wanted to kind of touch on something that I don't know if this is maybe an area we should or shouldn't go into, because I guess I'm trying to talk about the stigma that can sometimes be attached and the prejudice that can come, rightly or wrongly. I mean, wrongly, of course, but and how has that affected you and impacted on you as a family? Because you talked quite openly about Tyler being born and it being confirmed to you within 24, 48 hours that he was a child with Down syndrome. And I can only imagine that in that moment, what that kind of impact would have had on you and your wife, because it does carry a stigma, doesn't it? It does carry something.
Yeah, absolutely.
That people don't always want to talk about. And the reason why I mention it now, and I didn't kind of pre-warn you I'd talk about this, is because I think it's really important to talk about it. I think it's really important to have that conversation, because my own personal interaction with a person or a child with Down syndrome is a very, very good family friend of mine. His name's Mike. His daughter, Claudia, she's a child. She's about 18 or 19 now, a child with Down syndrome. And what an absolutely amazing person she is. I mean, truly, like, so much love, so much joy, so much warmth, so much giving,
There's a purity about children with Down syndrome. We won't go too far down the rabbit hole on that side of things, but
yeah,
I think one cliche, and I remember hearing this very early on, and then I'll get into kind of my thoughts on my story and an aspect with how we introduced our story to the world. If children with Down syndrome or people with Down syndrome ran the world, there would be no war, because everybody in power would be happy. Think on that for a second. To go back to the whole, being open and being honest and talking about our experience. So for the first, I want to say maybe 8 or 9 months after Tyler was born, we told very close friends. We obviously told our family. There were people at my work that I told and that sort of thing. But largely, we kept it to ourselves. I wouldn't say we kept it secret. If people asked, we would be open and we would respond. People were very kind and very respectful, and people didn't outwardly come out and say, "Hey, does your kid have Down syndrome?" But I suspect that people suspected, because there are visual, features that children with Down syndrome have that, there are tells. we waited and we were very careful because I think we wanted to process that ourselves and understand it so that when people did ask us those difficult questions or just any questions, we felt comfortable in our own skin to be able to answer those truthfully and honestly from our own experiences. So we waited those 8 or 9 months. We started to kind of tell people gradually as you know, the right times came up. And then a very key moment in our story, and specifically Tyler's story, was for his first birthday. So we posted publicly on social media, on Facebook. We wrote this long post saying, you know, outlining that Tyler had Down syndrome and the story that got us to that point. But we also created him a Twitter account for his first birthday. That was one of his first birthday presents. Now, that Twitter account kind of became central to a lot of the experiences that he's had. And the main focus why we created that was we wanted to tell Tyler's story. Now, that in itself is one piece of it, but the extra layer that we wanted to put onto it was we were never going to be false. We were never going to necessarily tell something that wasn't true. But we also wanted to highlight the positive experiences. So while we will come out and we'll say, you know, Tyler, and you touched on a really good point that not necessarily treating everyone as equals, although they are equals in the sense that they're all human beings, but the stigma of having a child with Down syndrome or autism or whatever the condition may be, at the end of the day, Tyler is still an 11-year-old boy. And the way I look at Tyler alongside his other 3 siblings is he still can be a naughty little boy, regardless of if he has Down syndrome or not. So you have to kind of separate the condition from the human being at times as well. And sometimes he is just, you know, you can't blame Tyler having Down syndrome for certain things. Sometimes he is just being a little shit, and you need to treat him respectfully in that sort of way as well. So that's something that I'm very keen, you know, to do as part of my journey with Tyler as his family. Is yes, he has Down syndrome, and there are, you know, parts of how you have to react and interact with him because of that. But at the same time, treat him as an equal to some extent, as much as you can, because that's, and again, it goes back with the forest piece. You know, yes, we do get this special conditions where he's not comfortable going and sitting in the terraces yet. I don't think he is. We had experience when we first moved over here of sitting him in the terraces at a baseball game, and he did not cope with it at all. So I don't know how well he'd do now. I'm terrified to try it again, and that's part of the reason why we haven't, because if it didn't go well, then it would be catastrophic, and I don't want to really entertain that. I will do it at some point, but by the way, but at some point we'll do that, and he, you know, we need to kind of introduce that normality to his life to see how he copes. You know, that's a level of respect that I need to give him at some point. I need to kind of get over my own prejudices and biases and fears and take him to a game and sit in the terraces to see how he does. So at some point that will come. So yeah, the Twitter piece and that we do occasionally share some of the negative pieces, but usually they're more on a functional kind of practical level. So if Tyler is going in for like a medical operation or something like that, that he had an MRI when he was like 18 months old. I remember posting that on Twitter, and that was like the hardest thing I've ever experienced, was me holding him in his arms as they gave him like the sleeping gas or whatever it is, and watching his eyes close and like his eyes roll as he was being put to sleep to go for the MRI. He's 18 months old. No kid that age should be going for an MRI. And we shared that on Twitter, and we were very honest and brutal about it. I said, you know, I had tears in my eyes. I was bawling my eyes out when I had to walk back to my wife, and we had to wait for the 30 minutes that it took to do the MRI for him to come back. I think it's important, and I think it's powerful to share those, because it's not all joy and happiness, but that's what we still want to promote. So most of what I put on social media in terms of my experience is the good stuff, because I think it's good to share that it's not a death sentence. It's not something that's going to impact your life in a negative way entirely, or it's not if you don't let it. And I think that's the key, is you still have control of your own destiny and what you do and you don't do and what you want to share. So creating the Twitter account for Tyler was a crucial part in being able to share what our experience is like and getting it out there. So in terms of being open and talking about it, I'm absolutely fine. I love people asking me questions. I think you only learn if you don't know something. The only way you're going to learn is by somebody telling you that. So I'm more than happy for people to come up to me in the street or tweet me or message me or whatever and ask me questions. I actually welcome it. I embrace that, because I think that's how people learn.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, just sitting here listening to you, I mean, we talked about it a little bit ago with me having my son, who's, you know, now 16 years old, but he has autism. And you're learning constantly, just like you would with any child, right? It's just a constant progress and of learning and adapting and trying to find the best way to love and support them in any way possible. So I really appreciate you sharing that stuff, because you're right. We tend to kind of shirk away from the stuff that's a little bit more raw, a little bit more challenging, but recognizing as well that there's, you know, as you pointed out, just in terms of how we use the right language and the right ways to describe these wonderful kids and adults who are also in that same sort of sphere, making sure that we're honoring the fact that they are human beings. So I appreciate that, Andrew. It's great. I hate to pivot away from this because it's so such a wonderful thing. But yeah, exactly. I'm really intrigued because, of course, being over here in Oklahoma and being in the United States. So what has been the process? Because you're really heavily involved in the NFFC and A group. I've had just such. Oh, go ahead.
No,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Fantastic.
What's that? Is that the scarf?
That's the new one. So we literally
North America group. Is that right? The North America.
Yeah.
The Nottingham Forest North America is the moniker that we went by. So previously it was NFFC USA. That was run by a gentleman called Sean Sims, who was based out of St. Louis. He ran it up until, I want to say, summer of 2019. He organized the first 2 national meetups that we had. The first one was in Atlanta. I believe I was like a dozen and a half. I think there were like 17 or 18 people turned up to that one. And then we did another one in 2019 in Chicago at the Globe. That was the one that really blew up and kind of launched Nottingham Forest overseas, at least in the continent of North America, kind of into the mainstream. So alongside that, we also had the Toronto Trickies, which was run, I think, then by Jordan Thielen. We also had a group in New York City that was quite prominent as well, that was run by Carl Hudson, Dan White. I don't know when Dan got involved. They were the 2 mainstays of that group. The meetup in 2019, shortly after that, Sean, his personal life was kind of taking over, and he wanted to step away from the responsibilities of NFFC USA. So collectively, myself, Carl, Jordan, a gentleman called Nigel Storr, and Dan, we kind of took it over. And we changed it. We brought the Toronto Trickies in, and we made it on the continent rather than on the individual countries, and we called it NFFC NA North America, supporting the entire continent. So yes, we don't support Mexico as well. I know that technically would be in that moniker, but it's the USA and Canada. From that point on, we started to try and build the community. So our original MO when we first got NFFC NA together was to just connect people. That's always been the driving force behind the group, is connect people. And I've said this a number of times, but if we have a group and we have this focal point where people are, say, traveling to a city in North America and they wanted to connect with someone to watch a game, or they live there, they live there and they want to start a group going, we could be that focal point, that middleman that helps you connect, A to B. So the example I gave was someone in Boston wants to watch a game. They reach out to us, we throw something on social media, they find another person, the 2 of them watch a game, they enjoy it, they start a group, and then the next week 2 more people come along, and then the next week another 4 people come along, and then you've got a group and a community starts to build. And if you do that in enough places, enough times, you have this very strong community, and that's
Forest taking over the world.
Absolutely. That should have been our hashtag. We went with Far Have I Travelled in the end, but yeah, Forest all over the world. And it's great that Forest play that at the end of the game, because it really does embody this whole the collective group that we have. And then it's not just based in Nottingham or even England or even the United Kingdom and Ireland. It is overseas. It's global. I remember a few weeks ago in Australia, they had a series of meetups spread across 4 or 5 different cities, and there were dozens of people showing up. There's groups in Serbia. There's a group in Malaysia. There's one in China. We have lots of splinter groups. Yeah, we are big. We are a big club. I don't know if you know that there's a fanzine called Oh Mist Rolling In. It's a fantastic fanzine. I wrote an article, literally, I think it's going into the next issue, speaking about Forest's global reach and then the connectivity that we now have as a club. And it's growing as well. The Premier League exposure is only going to make that grow even more. The story recently when Olivia, a friend of mine, Olivia from Chicago, went back and we saw that great video of her pitch side singing Mull of Kintyre holding the scarf up. We're finding new people, and we should absolutely be embracing that. If we want to grow as a club, we have to grow as a fan base as well and be welcoming. And I love the synchronicity of this, that we have to welcome children with additional needs in, as well as we have to welcome in these new fans. It feels like there's this kind of connection and this symbiosis there, that we should be a family club. We should be absolutely embracing when new people want to come and support this crazy little project that we have on in Nottingham, which is the football team. So long story short, with the NFFCNA stuff, so it is probably now predominantly me that is driving it. The other guys, we still connect and we still have conversations, but it's predominantly, I think, me that's driving it. So I handle the social media piece of it. So we've got one guy who hosts the Facebook side of things. I do Twitter. I'm in charge of kind of being the focal point, I think, on setting up meetings, the merch that we've just got. So this scarf here, that's all going through me at the moment. So what's great, though, is we also have these small splinter groups. So the guys in Columbus, in Ohio, they're just running with it. They're doing their own thing. I know now Carl Hudson's now based in Chicago. He's running with it as well. And we're going to have some things going on in Chicago that are going to be kind of exciting. The New York guys are pretty self-sufficient. You know, they've been doing it for so long now that they're self-sufficient. And it's great. We have this great little community that's self-sufficient, but also we have this great central focal point as well, where we can do these national things like the meetup that we're having in a few weeks and those kind of things, like the merch that we're doing and so forth.
Amazing. It's so great to see so much activity going on all over the world. And, you know, you're so right. It's everywhere, New Zealand as well. I want to quickly say that there are people in the comments. So Mabs was here first thing saying hello, and Brucey as well, and Ian from Toronto saying hello. Yeah, the women are playing as well. Paul Morley's in the chat. He thought that it was a boring Saturday afternoon, and then remembered that, of course, the women are live on the BBC iPlayer. They are 2-0 up. It's just started into the second half. So the Women's National League Cup final is underway, and Susan Wright is also watching it whilst listening to us. So thank you very much to all of you for multi-screening and watching the women and listening to us. One thing that I thought about a moment ago, I think you said it's Olivia that came over and she managed to go pitch side, and I thought it was amazing. And I was really pissed off with all the idiots that go on social media. Oh, how long have you been a fan for? I don't get that kind of experience, and I've been a fan for 500 years. And I'm like, sod off. Do you know what I mean?
I must confess, I had so much fun from the Nottingham Forest North America Twitter account responding to a lot of those comments. Richard, you probably saw a lot of these as well. We had a lot of fun calling them out for exactly what they were, and we tried to do it with you know, a firm amount of humor, calling out people. Was it it was the Super Bowl? I think I put out a tweet on the Super Bowl of saying, you know, how many people attending the Super Bowl were there at the very first one when the Packers won. You know, they're not real fans if they weren't there 60 years ago. And it's that level of, I don't want to say stupid, it's naivety, I think, more than anything else. That, like I said, if you want to grow the club, you have to embrace new fans. Otherwise, you'll remain exactly where you are. It'll never grow. And, you know, we're in the top 5 positions of the Premier League. And if we get into the Champions League, it's only going to grow even more. So you're going to get more fans in eventually. But at the same time, if you want to be sustained as a club and you want to be able to reach that commercial piece and be able to afford, you know, the money that you have to spend to sustain that position that we're in, our commercial revenue needs to go up. And in order for it to go up, you need to generate new fans. Wherever they may be in the world, you've got to embrace it, whether they're in Nottingham, in Mansfield, in Long Eaton, wherever, or if they're in North America or Australia or New Zealand or Africa or Malaysia or wherever. You know, you have to embrace that, because eventually, once the club figures out, you know, the merchandise piece and we get Forest kits for sale outside of NG2, you know, people are going to see Callum Hudson-Odoi and Morgan Gibbs-White, and they're going to be the next inspiration, and they're going to want to wear that jersey. And for every jersey that we sell, that's going to be extra revenue for the club. And that's just one small piece. And you keep building and building on top of that. And eventually we get a club that can go out and can buy, you know, these top name players that aren't going to just want to come to the club because of where we are, but we can actually afford them and sustain that growth as well. And in order to do that, you need to grow. You need to grow the fan base. And that's hopefully what we're seeing. So Olivia's a prime example that we found Olivia, the club found Olivia, and Olivia found the club. And now we have an extra supporter, and that story is you know, 2, 3, 5, you know, 100 times fold. You know, that's how we grow as a club. You need these new supporters. Did people complain about me going to see my first game in 1988 because I'd never been to a game before? It's the same principle in theory. You know, how is it any different? Everybody has to go to a first game and find the club somehow. What should it matter what their postcode or their zip code is?
I don't know that people I think people embrace the fact that new fans come on board, but I think they're getting a little bit irked because they see this fan from overseas coming to a game and getting the VIP treatment and the carpet rolled out. I say to those people, look, you might live in West Bridgford. You can go to where, I know tickets are hard to come by, but generally you can get to a game every week potentially. Whereas that guy, I think he came from Japan or from Asia. And that's exactly the point I made. Same thing. It's like the joy can't take that away from people. For God's sake, have a bit of kindness in your heart, guys. These people are getting on a plane, coming all the way over at their own expense. They want to be here and they want to be in the ground. And if the club then say, you know what, you've come all this way, you might not make it back again. Who knows what's going to happen? You might not financially have the chance to come back again. So we're going to make sure this is memorable for you, and long may that continue. You know what I mean? That's what we really want. We are going to have to move ourselves on because time is as ever, getting
Amazing.
away from us. And we could probably do about 5 episodes of the one with you, Andrew, because there's so much to talk about and it's all amazing stuff. But we wanted to crack on with your all-time favourite Nottingham Forest 11. And in fact, Tyler's done one as well. And there's some fantastic pictures on screen from when Tyler was interacting with Henry Lansbury, Chris Cohen, there's Jordan Smith, there's Ben Brereton Diaz, Eric Lehigh, Jamie Patterson, and Morgan Gibbs-White and Felipe. I mean, there's some fantastic images. And so Tyler's starting 11 that he's gone for, unsurprisingly, will feature probably all of those names. But for those of you that can't see the screen, Jordan Smith in goal, a back three of Ola Aina, Eric Lehigh, Matty Cash, and in the midfield, Chrissy Cohen, Ben Osborne, and then Chris Burke on the left, Jamie Patterson on the right, Henry Lansbury, Morgan Gibbs-White, and Ben Brereton Diaz. You mentioned something about Chris Burke before earlier, and so he's in Tyler's team. Was there a little story attached to Chris Burke?
We probably built this up way beyond any reasonable proportion, but Chris Burke was the first player ever, I think, to retweet Tyler on social media. Shortly after Henry Lansbury then retweeted, and the relationship with Henry grew from that. But I'm certain if I went back and looked over the history of the account, that Chris Burke was the first player to ever respond or retweet something that we sent out from Tyler's account.
Fantastic. And was Tyler responsible for picking this all by himself, or did you have to help him along a little bit?
Sure.
No, the
Tyler
team
probably wouldn't know any of those by name. So the
Right.
reason behind a lot of these is there's either been an interaction or some physical connection to the player. So with Jordan Smith, we have the photo, we have a signed Jordan Smith jersey. Jordan Smith, I will say this on the record, is the nicest Forest player I have ever met. The game before we moved to the US, it was a game against Bristol City. It was the last home game of the 2018 season, 2018 season. And we'd gone kind of behind the gates into the players' car park to try and get a Jamie Patterson jersey to take as a piece of memorabilia for Tyler, because he was playing for Bristol at the time. As we were leaving, Jordan Smith was at the gate, the gate at the in the Pete Taylor stand car park that leads into where the coach sits. And Jordan Smith was at the gate. The gate was closed, but he was signing stuff for some fans. And we walked past, and he saw Tyler, and he recognized Tyler. And I swear to God, he instantly dropped what he was doing, and we had this long conversation. He was genuinely interested and emphatic about what we were doing and how Tyler was and the journey that we were going on. And that always stuck with me, that all the players were kind, and we never had a bad experience with a player. But with Jordan Smith, he just seemed to go that extra level, which is why he's in there. And that save against Ipswich alone should get him into some people's starting 11s.
100%. And he was so thrilled when we got promoted. He was part of the squad. He was on the pitch at Wembley. He was. I remember seeing him, and he was so thrilled. Your own starting 11 that you've chosen features Mark Crossley in goal, a back four: Stuart Pearce, Michael Dawson, Des Walker, Matty Cash. You've gone in for a midfielder: Chris Cohen and Roy Keane, and then Andy Reid on the right, Andy Reid on the left. I beg your pardon. Stevie Stone on the right, Morgan Gibbs-White in the 10, and Stan Collymore. Now, there's an amazing set of players, and there's no wrong answers. We always say everyone picks players based on their own experiences. So just take us through Morgan Gibbs-White, for example. He's the only player that you've selected, I think I can see, from the current crop, and there are some good ones there. Why have you gone for Morgan?
So I'll give you some context on the entire 11 and what my thought process was in why I selected, because that kind of explains the Gibbs-White piece. So This is, I think, the best position player I've seen, and I actually have to have seen these people play in each position in the respective teams. So obviously with Gibbs-White and the current squad, I've been looking. I have been back a few times, and I've seen them a few times in the last couple of years. But I think Morgan Gibbs-White specifically stands out as the linchpin of what makes Forest tick, what makes us good. And I mean, there are some phenomenal players and names on there. Chris Cohen kind of goes without saying. I think Cohen's injuries kind of, reduced what he was able to do in his career. But I obviously have that personal connection with Chris as well, with the Tyler moment. But largely, it's every player on that piece, on that squad, is, I think, the best player I've seen play physically in those given positions. The hardest one, honestly, to come up with was probably the right fullback. With Matty Cash. I think Matty Cash was a phenomenal player. Also, remember the mascot game for Tyler, the Henry Lansbury game, the Chris Cohen game. We were asked by someone at the club to choose man of the match for that game. And I remember it was an incredible game against Wigan. We won 4-3. Are you ready for a real deep cut here? Because Thomas Lamb scored the winner in like the 94th minute to win 4-3. It was an absolutely incredible game. Oliver Burke scored 2 goals. This was when Ollie Burke was in his absolute prime and pomp before he went to Leipzig. We chose Oliver Burke as man of the match for that game. I hadn't watched much of the game because I was focusing on Tyler and making sure that his experience was as good as it could be. It turns out, retrospectively, because everyone who I spoke to after that game called us out on that and said, I get why you chose Ollie Burke scoring 2 goals, but you know Matty Cash was man of the match in that game, right? I didn't really watch much of it. We chose Ollie Burke because of the score. But yeah, Matty Cash, I think, was an incredible player in the few years that we had him. I also got a nice picture of Tyler with Matty Cash on that same game against Bristol City as well. So I think, like I say, every player, it kind of speaks for themselves. They're the best position players that I've seen play. Andy Reid, incredible as well. I've got this great photo of Andy Reid with Tyler the last time we went back as well. So yeah, that was the thought process behind why I chose those 11.
Fantastic. And there's another picture you've written for the Omis Rolling In fanzine, I think previously as well.
Yep.
And I've had a couple of articles, so we definitely celebrate that publication.
Local fanzines, it's an incredible publication.
100%. Dwayne is brilliant, and putting a shout out to you, buddy. You know, I'm always grateful to be asked to write, and I've contributed to the next issue as well. And the big theme really that Dwayne was kind of trying to get us to think about was, you know, what makes a club a big club and stuff like that. So I've, you know, found it kind of tricky to kind of focus on just one thing, but I've managed to put together an article, and it might be bits and pieces taken out of that. So I'll be looking forward to seeing the whole publication when it comes out, especially if you've got something in there as well, Andrew. So yeah, do support the Omis Rolling In fanzine, because it's a local publication and it's for you guys. It's only £3, I think. Hardly.
It is free. I was just going to say something. £3. What can you get for £3 these days?
Exactly. And it's by the fans for the fans. It's brilliant. Okay, right. We are up against the clock, so we better, I suppose, do this.
The lightning round.
Yeah, the great American institution that is Friends, right? Right, Andrew. So still running strong with many people, even generations after they, you know, it kind of started. So we're going to jump through these things pretty quickly. So just, you know, answer as quickly as you can. All right. What was your first Forest match live? I think you mentioned it, but
yeah, so it was Coventry. It was, I think it was like mid or early November 1988. It was a 0-0 draw. It was terrible.
Fantastic.
You to go back to war.
Yeah. The funny part was that's exactly what I saw too. I saw my first match was a draw. All right. I think things got switched around here. What player in Forest history would you like to see on the current squad?
It's an interesting question. I go back to Stuart Pearce, just because he was our leader, he was our captain. There's so much focus around Pearce. He was a better player going forward than I think people ever give him credit for. But he was just the driving force of that great, you know, second generation of Clough's golden era. So yeah, Stuart Pearce for me.
Fantastic. Yeah, can you imagine the energy on the pitch if you have him and Gibbs White
just
together?
Before them, we
amazing.
Forget the chant and the psycho chant, how much that drilled the crowd up. I know we have Mull of Kintyre, like the psycho chant before games back in the 80s and the early 90s. That was our Mull of Kintyre. That was what we did to get the crowd going. It was just one man that did that one focal point. So absolutely Stuart Pearce.
Yeah, it's the lasting memory of my first match with my granddad as well. I mean, I'm hearing that because, you know, I didn't really know a ton about the current squad players, you know, because I'd been in the US and there was no internet at the time. So most
also
people wouldn't even pass.
Stuart get well soon as well, obviously, with his
yes.
help.
Right.
Excellent.
He's back to looking. He was on commentary duty for TalkSport last night at the England game.
If you did have heart problems watching an England game, it's probably the safest place you could go back to commentating, because not much is going to get the blood.
We'll talk about that maybe in a bit.
Yeah. What your favorite away or third kit?
So I would go back to, there's one I really liked, and I think it was that sort of 2016, 2017, and it was the blue, like this deep navy blue. Had really clean Adidas lines. It was when we were going back to Adidas for a short while. I really liked that kit. It was also the kit that Tyler wore when he walked out with Jamie Patterson at Ashton Gate for the Bristol City game. I don't know what it was about that blue and that deep blue, but I really like that one. Also, the yellow and blue from the 150th year that Tyler's wearing in that photo, the signature photo. I love that one as well, because it's the historical colours, yellow and blue, traditionally our Forest's, you know, away colours. So that one as well for me. But yeah, I think those two. Brilliant. Yeah, I just actually got that because it's one that has 888 on the front of it, right? The blue one.
Yeah, I just got that one. Greg and I are, well, he's way ahead of me. We're not necessarily competing for who has the most shirts. He's going to kill me in that regard because he's got far too many, more than I could ever hope for. What is your favorite Forest moment or memory?
It's the Tyler mascot thing. I remember walking out and I could literally talk for hours on stories from that day alone. It's that imprinted and embedded in everything that I think is good about my Forest experience with this second half of my life and my my journey with Forest. I remember walking out and collecting Tyler. I'll tell you this little anecdote about the story. So that picture of Tyler where he's got this incredible beaming smile on his face. The reason why he's smiling, and if you watch, there's video footage that the Nottingham Post captured this, and this absolutely backs this up completely. So I'm walking out with Mark Bullock, who was, I think, the chief marketing guy at the time, to collect Tyler from Chris. Now, I didn't realize that Chris was going to ask me to come in for a photo. So I kind of go in and I kind of step back because they're taking the photo, and I kind of half step a little bit. They'd been watering the pitch. Man City will be relieved to know that they were watering the pitch, and it was a little slippy. So I nearly fall over in front of like 17,000 people. Tyler sees me coming and he's giggling his little ass off. So that's why he's smiling. He's smiling at me nearly falling on my ass in front of like 16,000 people. So then I collect Tyler, I walk off the pitch. So we then had to walk back round the back of the Trent end to get back to Fawaz's hospitality box on the halfway line in the Brian Clough stand, because that's where they had us for that game. I was in tears behind the Trent end walking back because it hit me then, like the magnitude of what had happened and this experience that Tyler had that I'd had. Like it was all my dream. I'd walked out the tunnel on a match day. I'd never expected in my lifetime that I'd do that, and then the occasion that it was for on top of that as well, it hit me, and I was just in tears walking behind the Trent, and it was an unbelievable moment.
Brilliant,
incredible. Apart from Cloughy or Cooper, who's your favorite Forest manager?
That is a really good question. I think I know this seems very, very reactionary, but I think there's things about Nuno that I really like, and I've had some personal experiences with Nuno in the last sort of 6 months. So I think on and off the pitch, and I know that's such a common thread, but Nuno just feels like the real deal. So the reason I went back most recently was my dad has some health issues. I managed to get my dad to a training session. Thankfully, the club were really kind and they helped us out. And we met Nuno. Nuno spent some time with my dad. So my dad, he's had a tracheostomy, so he can't speak, but he wanted to ask Nuno a question. So Nuno was very kind and patient while my dad kind of mouthed the question. Nuno, in what is not his native language, listened, understood the question, and gave my dad an honest answer, which was really kind in itself. But then here's the kicker. So the Home for Christmas that I was invited along to represent NFFCNA. So Nuno was there. And afterwards, I got a photo with Nuno. He recognized me straight away. First thing he did was ask how my dad was. Like, the guy is legit. He's 100%, like, straight down the line. I knew before that, but that was the bit that absolutely cemented that this is the genuine article. This is like a guy that is empathetic. He cares. You see the footage from the Warriors press conference and every other interaction that you see Nuno have with the fans. He's the real deal. He genuinely is. And then he's also a damn good manager as well. You look at what he's doing on the pitch. It's the real deal. So for me, and I think they're great names that you call out, because I think Cloughy and Cooper generationally for the last 40 years are absolutely the two best managers that we've seen. I'd maybe add Frank Clark into that as well, because we had some great times under Clark. But Nuno keeps the trajectory that we're following. There's a conversation with more Clough. Genuinely, I don't think anyone ever will replace Clough, but there's definitely a conversation that he will be absolutely up there. If he gets us to the Champions League and sustains that over a number of years, then in the modern game compared to when Cloughy was doing it, and Cloughy was a genius, and that's absolutely unquestionable. But the things Nuno is doing with the resources that are put in front of him, the constraints of how the league is structured, phenomenal stuff. The guy is legitimately the real deal.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, how blessed were we? He fell into our lap in that way. It's incredible. Yeah. If Forest could sign one player from a non-top six side, who would it be? So your Billas, your Bournemouth, Fulham, Wolves,
that is a great
West Ham.
Question. I don't know. We always go back to like the squad depth and what do we actually need? And I think we need a winger because if Callum or Anthony get injured, I think Jota and Ramon Sosa, they're okay, but they're not like Champions League pedigree. So you're looking for someone of that caliber. Thomas Wissa comes up a lot. Brentford, I think he would be a great example. I know he's a horrible player, but there's something about John McGinn that he's the sort of player that you want on your side because he's an absolute arse, and he's kind of like Villa's Ryan Yates. Now we've got a Ryan Yates, but John McGinn's just one of those players that always seems to be there. Matty Cash, again, we go back to Cash as that kind of fullback winger option. You asked for one, I've given you three, so I'll say Thomas Wissa because that's a nice easy one.
Brilliant. Based on what they do on the pitch right now, I think I know the answer to this question. Who is more valuable to Forest, Morgan Gibbs-White or Murillo?
So the last 2 articles I've written for Almost Rolling In have been about how good Morgan Gibbs-White is for Forest, and the one before that was about how good Murillo is for Forest. So it's a topic I'm acutely aware of. I think defenders keep you in games. Attacking players win you games. So for me, if you want to win and you want to be near the top end of the table, you need players like Morgan Gibbs-White in the team. I think Murillo, and we talked about this over the summer when there was this threat that Morgan or Murillo were going to have to be sold for FFP reasons, that we'd accepted that Murillo could go because he'd be easier to replace. And I think that's your answer, is that you can't find players like Morgan Gibbs-White just off the shelf. You know, we're very fortunate to have Morgan and Murillo as well. But I think what Murillo brings is more replay. Well, what you lose if Murillo goes is less impactful than what you lose if Morgan Gibbs-White goes, or when you notice when Gibbs-White has a bad game. You don't notice necessarily when Murillo has a bad game.
Yeah.
So yeah, Gibbs-White.
Brilliant. Last question. Forest win the Premier League, but are then relegated into the Championship for the next 25 years. Would you take it?
Nope.
I need to keep score of who's. Yeah. Brilliant, man. That was great. Excellent. Well done.
I majored in lightning rounds. All right?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so time is moving along. So let's chat Forest. It's been a fantastic season, Andrew. It surpassed all of our expectations. How confident are you that Forest are going to make it into the Champions League?
I'm not. And I think that's part of the humility that comes with why we're doing so well is we're not, and we continue to not take things for granted, and that's been entrenched into the philosophy of the club. You hear the players talk about it, and Nuno in every single goddamn press conference when he gets asked about where you're going to be at the end of the season, it's the next game, and that's all we're focusing on. I think the league doesn't lie, and I think at the end of the season we'll know if we deserve it or not. I think we're absolutely in a position where we could and we probably should make the Champions League, but I've been a Forest fan for too long. I've seen us fall from grace too many times. I think I said this before on a different podcast. The evidence is there. If you show the players, this is what you've done to get to this point in the season to be where you are now. If you can keep that going and sustain that, there's no reason why we can't finish in the top 4 or the top 5 and get that Champions League spot. So, yeah, I think we can. I think that's the thing. But in the time-honoured words of Nuno, ask me at the end of the season.
I think what's interesting to me is the more I talk to fellow Forest fans, that they seem to have the same opinion as me, which is, look, we're taking each game as it comes. This has been an amazing season. No matter what happens, it's going to have been the best season we've had for a long, long time. We've been in the Championship and League One over those 23 years, and I'll support my club day in, day out, whatever league they're in. And it makes me think of then the other teams in the Premier League, especially those that haven't been relegated for ever, or those that have been used to being in the top 4, top 5, or top 6 or whatever. And the moaning you get, these sheer kind of like
Arsenal TV
sense of entitlement because their team isn't doing so well, etc., etc. And it's
Manchester
almost like
I'm
not going to watch this. It's like, well, just try it out. Try not winning something for a season or two, because you know what, it happens to the best of us. So thinking about players coming in, I thought you might have said Cunha a minute ago when you said about outside of the top, and he's been linked again. Richard's got quite a strong opinion on Cunha's attitude, and I think I'm kind of probably falling in line with that following his last sending off. But is Cunha the type of player that you want to see at the club, Andrew, or what other type of players are you hoping that we might bring in the close season?
I think if you look at what happened in January, I think it's critical to how the club now operates. And Nuno, we know that Nuno likes a small squad. I think it's critical that we get the right players in. So, yeah, Cunha's undoubtedly, an incredibly talented player, but if he's not the right player for the dressing room, there's something to be said. I don't think it's just the pure talent in the players that we've got that's got us to where we are. I think that harmony in the dressing room, that collective, that togetherness that we see on and off the pitch, on the team and off the pitch as well, because I think that does play a part in it as well. But I think if a player isn't the right fit for the dressing room, regardless of, Mbappe or Messi, they might be the best players in the world, but if they don't fit in with the dressing room, I'm not saying that we shouldn't turn down going out and buying Mbappe and Messi if they came up, but my point is, you could be the best player in the world, but if you don't get on with your teammates and you're one player in a squad of 10, it's not going to work. So I trust the process. I think the problem we have is the squad isn't very deep in certain positions. We've been so fortunate with injuries that we've not had to see just how bad, not bad's the wrong word, but just how shallow that squad depth is. Whenever Jota Silva's come in or so, they've done okay, but I wouldn't expect them to sustain that over a long period of time, over a number of games. And I think we've been so fortunate that we've not had to see that yet. So I think there are positions in the whole of the team where we do need to strengthen. But I trust the process. I think Nuno's, he knows what he wants. I think we've now got that global network of scouts and that process of transfer activity that we've found players before, so there's nothing to suggest that we can't find them again. But maybe now with an extra, the incentive of Champions League and a bit of extra money in the coffers, that we can go out and we can go to that next level again. So I don't know specifically. That's the truth. I mean, I trust the players and the coaching staff and the staff to find the right players for us. They've done it before.
Definitely. So what about your player of the season thus far? Because there's been so many good performances, and I think you generally just don't see a lot of significantly poor performances by any one player. But is there somebody that stood out to you specifically?
I think we called this out very early on in the season. I think the difference Milenkovic has made, and I talked about the ability to stay in games and how important that is. Our defense has been what's got us where we are. We've won a lot of games by the odd goal here or there, because we've kept so many clean sheets. And I think Milenkovic and his partnership with Murillo and Ola Aina and Nico and Moreno earlier in the season, I think that's been critical to it. So yes, goals and the ability to score goals wins you games. And I'm going to contradict what I said earlier, that's the important piece. I think for where we needed to be this season, coming off the back of last season, we need to be better at the back. And I think Milenkovic, and he's now adding goals as well. With the 4 or 5 that he scored this season. So for me, it is still Milenkovic. I think the difference he's made has been fundamental to how good we've been this season.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his, and he was the player before we even kicked the ball when we did our who do you think is going to be the player of the season. He was the one that I said I think is going to be him. Just a quick update: Stoke City women have just scored to make it 2-1. It's on the 72nd minute. And in fact, I've got it on my phone. It was the girl that just came on. Literally, I think first touch, the ball got flung into the box, and she got her head on it. So it's 2-1 still to Forest women with about 20 minutes to play. So if you are watching and you're still listening to us, thank you very much. I wanted to mention Chris Wood as well. He played for New Zealand. So just a quick catch up on him. Scored a fantastic hat trick again in their 7-0 win over Fiji. Tyler Binden, the player we signed and loaned back to Reading, got on the score sheet as well. And then Chris Wood got substituted off on the 63rd minute he got his hat trick. He thought, I'm going to go and sit down and have a rest. And then he thought, you know what I'll do? Because he's such a lovely guy. I'll go and sign an autograph or two in the crowd. And there he was in the crowd and doing nothing more than just being the people person he is. And the referee decided to give him a booking for that, which I found absurd. I don't know if you saw that at all, Andrew, but what did you make of that?
It's incredible, isn't it? I'm guessing, and we talk a lot about, the referees wanting to be the main character. I think this was just one of those situations where he saw an excuse, knows it's going to drum up some headlines, and decides that, I'll make a name for myself. There's no reason. I mean, the player's not on the pitch at that point. I don't get the logic behind that. It's baffling.
I guess I'm trying to work out as to what rule he's leaning on to enforce the caution, because... when you go into the crowd once you've scored, like Callum did, and he got a booking for that, didn't he, against Man City? But yeah, as you say, he's been taken off. He's gone off. It didn't really seem to make too much sense to me either. Okay, all right, time for this.
Name that grandmother.
Oh yeah, we do like to have. Well, I like to have a little bit more of a random set of questions at the end of our One With episode. So they're going to come at you thick and fast, Andrew. Marmite, love it or hate it?
Not a fan. Hate it.
How am I cooking your steak?
Medium rare.
What's your favourite cheese?
Cheese. At the moment, I would probably say mozzarella because we eat a lot of pizza over here.
What's the best sandwich?
Bacon.
Oh, yeah.
Just throw bacon in there.
And in honour of this segment it's named after, what are your grandmother's names?
So my grandmother on my dad's side was Jenny, and on my mother's side it was Sheila.
2 great grandmother names. Thank you very much, grandmothers, for being the fantastic people that you are. All right, we've come to the end of what has been an absolutely fantastic episode, and I've loved every part of it. Andrew, over in Wisconsin, thank you very much for spending some time with us today. The floor is yours to tell us anything else that we would like, you think we can know about the North America group, What's coming up for you guys? Are you coming over again soon, hopefully to grab a game or to see some family?
I'm not at the moment, unfortunately. There's no plan. I expect at some point, sadly in the near future, I'll probably have a visit because of my dad's health. That's probably going to come sooner rather than later. That I'll need to either come over for good or not so good reasons. We'll obviously have to wait and keep our fingers crossed on that one. If it's in the season, I'll obviously naturally try and get to a game. I think the current political climate and my current immigration status, I'm slightly more cautious about wanting to travel at the moment because there may be reasons not to. But outside of that, no, I don't have any plans to come back anytime soon. From a upcoming perspective, we do have the Nottingham Forest North American meetup in 4 weeks' time, which is in Columbus, Ohio. The guys in Columbus are helping us organize that. That's looking like it's going to be an absolute cracking weekend. I'm going to take my eldest daughter, Cecily's coming down with me. I'm going to spend the weekend in Columbus exploring, meet some fellow fans, see what Columbus is all about. I'm actually taking Cecily down to the embassy next week in Chicago to watch the cup game against Brighton. And then I'm doing Chicago Fire game after that. I'm going to meet up with Carl and some of the guys down there. That's the first time I've been down this season. So, but other than that, it's business as usual. Work's busy. Life's busy. Everything's busy. But I'm still finding time to watch Forest every week. Guarantee you that.
Fantastic. Andrew, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. Richard, over in Oklahoma, thank you very much, sir, to you.
Thank you. Yeah, Andrew, it's been a privilege. It's been great getting to know you a little bit through WhatsApp and getting to be a part of that great group. And I appreciate just the devotion and commitment you have. You put your entire self into everything you can do. That's clearly evident in terms of why you support and love and strengthen your family, and then what you do for Forest over here in the States, because we need more fans, right? We want to continue to be as big of a club as we can be, international as you talked about. So thank you so much for all you're doing. I think it's great work.
Absolute pleasure.
Yes, indeed. So it's been a fantastic episode to celebrate World Down Syndrome Day and to celebrate our love of Nottingham Forest. And touching on the Forest all over aspect, we are acutely aware that fans in America, in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Asia, wherever you may be, it's not always easy to link up with other fans. So hopefully you'll take inspiration from what Andrew was talking about and trying to link people up. And we hope that what we do here on Talking Reds might help bring you closer together as well. So please do tell your friends about Talking Reds and hopefully pass on to your Nottingham Forest friends that we are here and we are celebrating the club and we are celebrating Nottingham Forest fans from all over the world, old and new. This has been the One with Andrew Cove. See you soon.
Come join Greg and Richard right here.